Um, let's get this all ready to go. Let's go 2 point. And this is still section 3.5, so we're kind of piggybacking on what we did yesterday. And we just went over the basic graphs. Okay, we didn't do anything to it. We didn't move it around. We didn't do anything like that. But we're gonna play around a little bit today. So let's do. I'm just gonna make. I'm looking at the worksheet I'm giving you, and I'm just gonna throw some new numbers in there, some different numbers. Just so I don't want to ruin all the fun and do all the problems for you from this worksheet. You wouldn't want that, would you? You want to. You want a
No,
chance?
of course
Tiffany, you're
not.
awake. Like all of a sudden. So let's do this. We'll go absolute value, and let's go x minus. We'll keep the numbers relatively small since my graphs in here, there's a lot of space between them. So let's draw a little graph. Let's make this a little thicker so it stands out. A little x and y axis going on. Oops, let's try that one more time. Start here, and we'll go about right there. There we go. How's that? Looks good. Let me just copy that so I don't have to redraw it every time. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to graph this thing. Now you could, well, let's do it this way. Let's just, let's see what happens when we graph it. Now, if you're not really sure, what's different about this compared to what we did yesterday? Now, we did do an absolute value yesterday. I think it was the last one we did, right? What did it look like, the absolute value? What just generally, give me some kind of a shape. A what? A V, exactly. It looks like a V, doesn't it? Okay, look in your notes, and it looks like a V, right? Straight on one side, straight on the other side, so it looked like boom, boom, like this. Okay, in fact, let's do this. Let's actually graph this, and I'll show you the difference between what we're going to do with this red one and what we're going to do with this one right here. And let's make this a different color instead of black, since our x and y axis is black. Let's go this nice green right there. Can you see that all right? Let me look. Yep, that shows up pretty good. A little lighter on my screen. Um, so let's graph this first one. Do you remember what it is? If I put a 0 in for x, what's y? It's 0, because the absolute value is 0, 0. If I put a 1 in for x, what do I get for y? 1, so 1, 1. Remember this? Yes? Actually, I should be doing this in red, shouldn't I? We'll keep it all color coordinated. So 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, and so on, right? You could keep going if you wanted to. That's enough. Get us going on what this thing looks like. It's not a curve, though, is it? This is a completely straight line. Now, some of the graphs that we've been doing have nice, rounded curves and stuff like that, but this is just a straight line this way. But is that it? What about negative numbers? Can I put negative numbers in for x? Absolutely. I can take the absolute value of a negative number. But what happens when I take the absolute value of a negative number? It becomes what? It becomes positive, doesn't it? So if I stick in a negative 1 in for x, what do I get for y? What's the absolute value of negative 1? It's what? It's positive 1. So if I go negative 1 on the x, I go positive 1 on the y. See how that v starts? Now you could just stop right here and just connect those 2 points, but I just want to kind of get you an idea what this is looking like. If I put negative 2, I get positive 2. Put negative 3, positive 3, and so forth. I could keep going, excuse me, if I wanted to. So let's connect them, and looks like that. And let's connect these, and it looks like that. Yeah, it's pretty good. There we go. There's, excuse me. My goodness, I still in my throat. I'm gonna have to do that a few times. I apologize. So look what we got. We've got y equals absolute value of x. Now, what's the difference between this red one and this green one right here? Well, let's put some numbers in, and I'll actually draw the xy chart thing. Let's put some numbers in and see what happens. We'll plot the points, and then we'll take a look and compare it to the red one and see what's different about the red one compared to the green one. See what I'm going to do here. Just for future reference, I'm going to group that together. So watch when I take this, and then, oops, if I can grab it. There we go. No, come on. Where are you? There you go. See, I can move it all around like this if I wanted to as just one whole graph. All right, so let's go back to the green one. Let's put some numbers in. So, I don't know. What numbers do you want to pick for x? Pick a couple negatives, maybe 0, a couple positives. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Let's pick a negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2. All right, that's where we started yesterday, isn't it? So let's start there and see what we get. So what we're doing is we're taking these x's, we're putting it in for this x, figuring out what our y is going to be. That's all it is, just a little substitution, plug and chug, right? So stick a negative 2 in for x. Negative 2 minus 3. You should be able to do that in your head. What's negative 2 minus 3? Negative 5. But if I take the absolute value of negative 5, I get what? Positive 5. See what I'm doing? Okay, put a negative 1 in for x. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. Absolute value of negative 4 is positive 4. Put in a 0 in for x. 0 minus 3. What's 0 minus 3? It's negative 3. What's the absolute value of negative 3? It's positive 3. Look what happens to our numbers. What's going on here? This is 5, 4, 3. What do you think this one is? 2, 1. I'll tell you what. This isn't really going to show us the entire graph right here. So let's maybe put some more numbers in here. So we went 0, 1, 2. Let's put in a 3. Let's put in a 4. Let's put in a 5, just to give us a better idea of what's going on. Because if I just graphed these right here, you may not see exactly what it's going to look like. Let's just put some more in, okay? And that's what's good about this XY chart. I could put as many points in that I want, then I can get a better idea of what my graph's going to look like. All right, so let's put a 3 in for this. Now that's an important number because 3 minus 3 is what? 0. So that actually gives me one of my intercepts, doesn't it? All right, let's put in a 4 in for this. Put in a 4. 4 minus 3 is 1. The absolute value of 1 is still 1. Notice, none of my y's are negative, are they? And they're not going to be because it's the absolute value, correct? So that's never going to change. So we'll put a 5 in here. 5 minus 3 is 2. Absolute value of 2 is 2. All right, now I think we're ready to plot some points, don't you? Let's put some in here. Negative 2, 5. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put a dot right there. Negative 1, 4 would be right there. Right? 0, 3 would be right there. 1, 2. You getting the idea what this is looking like? But if I just stopped right there, that's all the points I put in there. It looked just like a straight line, wouldn't it? But what does an absolute value look like, though? What does the general absolute value look like? Looks like a V. Is this green one look like a V yet? No, it's not. So we got to put some more in, right, until it starts going the other way. Does that make sense? Because look what happens to these numbers. It starts at 5. It gets smaller, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. But then it starts turning around and starts doing what? Gets bigger, right? Yeah. So then it goes 1 and then 2, and this will be 3 and 4 and so on. You see that? So this is actually decreasing until it gets to here, and then it starts increasing. All right? Now you kind of know why we talked about that one, continuous thing, decreasing, increasing, and all that good stuff. All right, so where are we at? 2, 1, right? See what I'm doing? I'm just looking at this graph, right? Just plotting the points. 3, 0, right here. Now again, it looks like it just keeps on going straight down like this, right? If I stopped right there, my graph wouldn't look right because it would just look like a straight line. But watch what happens to this next point. That's why I stuck in a few more points. Stick in 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then look what it does. It starts going up now, doesn't it? So it starts changing direction. So it's not just one straight line, is it? And then put a 5 and you go 2. And if you wanted to, you could put some more. You don't even have to write them in here. What do you think this is going to do? It's going to go up like this. Going to go up like this. Going to go up like this. Everybody see that? Do you see the straight? Do you see the V? All right, now let's connect them. And this starts right here. We'll connect it like that. This starts right here. There you go. And we'll connect it like that. There you go. Now, let me group the green together because I'm going to do something here in a sec. Group. Okay. Look at the difference. They almost look identical, don't they? The green one and the red one. Would you agree? Yeah, they look the same shape, don't they? They're just as wide. But what's the only thing that's different about the green one compared to the regular, normal red one? Just moved on the x-axis, didn't it? Okay, it just shifted over. And that's why I wanted to group these. Watch, because basically it did this. It moved over like that. Wouldn't you agree? That red one's now sitting right on top of the green one, basically. Okay, and that's all it did. It just moved over 2 places, didn't it? But which direction did it move? It moved to the right, didn't it? Look at this equation right here. This says x minus 3. So what do you think happens? Let's go a different color here. What do you think happens when I put a minus in here? It moves it to the right. Yeah, it moves it in the positive direction. So it moves to the right. Even though it's negative, right, it moves it to the right. So minus 3 moves it to the right. What if, watch this, what if I said y equals the absolute value of x plus 2? It moves it to the left. Moves it to the left, right, because a minus moves it to the right. So what do you think a plus does? It takes that red one, that original one, right, and moves it to the left. So it actually moves in the opposite direction. So that moves to the left. So it's like this. It's basically, watch this, I'm going to copy and paste, and we'll make it blue right there. Let's put it back to the original spot right there. Okay, so there's your original one right there. So if I said y equals the absolute value of x plus 2, do I have to really go through all this every single time I graph one of those? No, because you know what the original one looks like, don't you? All this does to it, it moves it to the left 2 places. So watch. There's one place to the left. What would that graph be right there? That would be y equals the absolute value of what? X plus 1, right? That would be x plus 1, right? Because we move it in the opposite direction. And then if I moved it to here, now what is that equation? Y equals the absolute value of what? X plus 2. Everybody got it? So when you move it to the right, it's going to be a minus. And when you move it to the left, it's going to be a plus. Does that make any sense? Okay. And these are valuable things because it doesn't only work with absolute value. It works for all the other graphs that we're going to do as well. Okay. So let's say this. Let's give this purple right here. So if I had y equals the absolute value of x, like minus, we'll just say a, right? Instead of saying 2 or 3 or 5 or 7, we just put a right there. Is that all right? So when you see something like this, first of all, what does it look like? What's the general look of our graph right here? It's a what? It's a V, right? Okay, it's a V. What does this thing do to that original V, that original red one right there? It moves it to the what? To the right. Okay, so you might want to jot that down in your notes. Okay, so this minus moves, and we already wrote it up top there, but we'll write it right here, to the right. I think I'm getting off my screen a little bit. Okay, moves to the right. And what would this do? X plus a. What do you think that does to it? It moves the graph to the left. Exactly. All right, it goes in the other direction, doesn't it? Now you kind of understand why it does because we put the numbers in and we saw exactly what it did to it. All right, it did move it to the right even though it was a minus. Okay, so just think about it going in the opposite direction. I guess that's a good way to think about it. That's not so bad, is it? Let's mess around a little bit more with this. Let's get rid of this blue one. Let's get rid of, oh, I got all these dots. Let's see, get rid of these dots. Sorry about that. Let's see. There we go. Get rid of that dot. Whoops. I want the red one to stay there. Just want to get rid of the dots. Tell you what, I'll just move this out of the way. Guess I could pause this while I do all this mess, couldn't I? Alright, let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Good. So now I'm going to do something else to this. And let's get rid of all this mess. Guess I should have just highlighted everything except for that. So, all right, we're done with that part, right? So we now know how to move it to the left and move it to the right. So we're fine with that. What we're going to do now is something a little bit different. By the way, when we did that, when we said y equals the absolute value of x minus a, we actually changed the value in here inside of the function. Now, what is our function? Our function is the absolute value. So we actually changed the x value inside of the function. Everybody see that? This is important, what I'm going to say right here. So when we change the inside of the function, right, we change the x value inside of the function, right, because it's inside the absolute value, that moves it left or right. But watch this. When I change something outside of the function, this does not move it left or right. Do you see the difference? See, this x minus a is all inside the absolute value. Look at this. The x is just the only thing inside the absolute value. What did I do here? I just changed the outside, didn't I? Now, what do you think that's going to do to our graph? Well, let's do a little XY chart. Let's throw a few numbers in and see what happens here. So again, let's put -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. And we'll see if we need to put any more numbers in there or not. So let's put in -2 in for this. Now, the math is a little bit different on this. Right here, we subtracted this, we put a number, or whatever that number was, and we actually subtracted, then took the absolute value. Okay? So we subtracted, then we took the absolute value. What are we going to do here, though? We're going to take the absolute value of this number and then add a 2 to it. There's a big difference. Do you see it? All right. So let's put in -2. The absolute value of -2 is 2. And now we go 2 plus 2 is 4. Everybody with me on that? Let's put a -1 in here. Absolute value of -1 is 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. Put a 0 in there. Absolute value of 0 is 0. Plus 2 is 2. You see what's happening, don't you? 4, 3, 2. What do you think this is going to be? Okay. Well, let's see if it is. Put a 1 in here. All right. You'd think it keeps on going down, right? But if you stick a 1 in here, what do we get? Absolute value of 1 is 1 plus 2 is what? 3. So it actually doesn't keep on going down, does it? So that's why it's good to have several points in this x column to see what's happening here. Put in a 2. Absolute value of 2 is 2 plus 2 is what? 4. With me? Let's plot this thing. Since we're in purple, we'll stay in purple here. Let's plot it and see what it does to our original red absolute value graph. So -2, 4. So we go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 1 point. -1, 3. -1, 1, 2, 3. Right there. 0, 2 is right there. 1, 3 is right there. And then 2, 4 is right there. Still looks like a V, doesn't it? But did we move it left or right? No, what did we do? We moved it what? We moved it up. That's right. So guess what this thing on the outside is going to do? It's going to either move it up or down. How do we know which way to move it? Now this one, you move it in the direction that you think you're going to move it, right? The other one you moved in the opposite direction. This way, that's a plus. So the plus means we're going to move it up. What if this was a minus? What we would do to that graph? We'd move it down. Everybody with me on that? Okay, so let's graph this thing. Or I'll tell you what, let's just do this. Watch, let's just take this original graph and then just move it up 2 places. There you go. That's the graph right there. So if you know how to draw the original graph, right, with the vertex, this thing right here is called the vertex, at 0, 0, right? You go over 1, up 1, to the left 1, up 1. You do that graph right there, then put a number on the end of it. What does that do? It just moves it up or down. So what if I said, let's just jot this over here. What if I said y equals the absolute value of x minus 3? What would I do to this graph? Well, remember our starting position. That's our original starting position. So what do I do when I put -3? Move it what? Move it down 3, right? Okay, and that would go right there, wouldn't it? So that's what that graph would look like. Is that making sense? That's really not that hard. Do we have to draw that XY chart thing every single time we do this? No. I'm trying to show you an easier way. You ever hear the phrase, don't reinvent the wheel every time you want? Nobody's ever heard that? Don't reinvent the wheel? Okay, good. It's a phrase that's been used for many, many years. Okay, what does that mean when I say, look, you don't have to reinvent the wheel? What does that mean? It means it's already been done for you, right? Yeah, people have already invented something for you. Just use it, right? You don't have to go back to the very beginning. It's like this. Since we showed you how to move this thing all around, you don't have to go back to this every single time, right? You recognize what these numbers are doing, and then you just go from there. Does that make any sense? What if we did this? Let's really jazz it up here. what if, let's do another color here. Since I got this white background, I can use darker colors now. What color haven't I used? How about this darker orange? Let's see if that shows up. What if I said, let's graph y, that kind of looks the same as red, y equals x minus 2 in the absolute value plus 3. All right, we'll stick with real simple numbers. Actually, let's put this up here like that. All right, and let's just make a different color. Let's go to the darker green. How's that? All right, so here's our original graph, this red one right here. So what does this do to my original graph? Well, what does this minus 2 do to my graph? It moves it where? 2 to the what? To the right. Okay, so we move it 2 to the right. Now, it'd be nice, wouldn't it, if you had a little program like this and you can just like move everything over just by clicking buttons. But that's all right. You still have an idea. Now, is that this graph right here? No, because that's all that was. What does this plus 3 do to this graph? It raises it up 3, right? So I move it up. There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. And that's what that graph would look like. That's all there is to it. Okay? So if I was going to graph this like from scratch, right, and I didn't have the original graph drawn and all that kind of stuff, what would this tell me? Look, this tells me I move it, because my original vertex is right here, isn't it? This tells me I'm going to move it to the right, so watch what I do. I go 2 places to the right, 1, 2. Okay? And what does this plus 3 tell me I'm going to do? Move it to the, or move it not to the, but what? Move it up 3, 1, 2, 3. So watch what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to start my graph. I'm just going to put a dot right here at -2, or I'm sorry, +2, 3. Everybody see that? Yes? Because that's the vertex. It was at 0, 0, wasn't it? So instead of moving the whole graph around, let's just take our beginning point, our origin, our vertex is what they call it. Okay, let's take that, and I know what I'm going to do to it. I'm going to move that 2 places to the right, and I'm going to move it 3 places up. So I'm here, and I move it 2 to the right, 1, 2, and then I move it 3 up, 1, 2, 3. Put it right there. Now, what's the rest of the graph look like? The rest of the graph is actually, let's get rid of all this. Give me some room. What's the rest of the graph going to look like? It's going to go over 1 and up 1. Everybody see that? And then over 2 and up 2. You don't have to keep, doing those forever. Just do 2 or 3 of them. And then what's this one going to do? It's going to go to the left 1 and up 1, and to the left 2 and up 2. See how easy it is to graph? So absolute values are really nice. I mean, they're really nice and easy to graph. You don't have to worry about curves and all that stuff. It's basically just straight lines kind of thing. It's close enough. And then there's your graph. And we did it from scratch, right? It's not like we took that original graph that was already on my computer, just moved it over. We just did it completely from scratch. What do you think of that? It's kind of easy, isn't it? Kind of. Yeah, once you understand what all that stuff means. So you could take something that looked pretty confusing, right? What was this again? I erased it. Absolute value, it was x minus what? 2, right? And then plus 3. That looked pretty confusing. If you would have walked in this morning, right, and I said, okay, everybody get a sheet of paper out and graph that. Who thinks they probably would have got the graph right? Maybe a couple of you. But then you'd probably end up doing this, wouldn't you? This XY chart, putting a whole bunch of numbers in, and then hopefully picking the right numbers and getting the right look at this. And that you could do that, okay? That's definitely an option for you. But is that really the best option? Is that the best use of your time, doing this XY chart and putting a ton of numbers in and seeing what your graph's going to look like? It really isn't. Okay, so what do? We looked at its absolute value. Since I know that it's an absolute value, I know it's going to look like a V. And then I saw the stuff inside the absolute value. The stuff inside the function moves it left and right. Inside the function, though, since it's a minus, that moves it to the right, moves it in the opposite direction that we think it's going to move, right? So we move it to the right. And then what does this do? This moves it up, okay? And so this goes to the right 2, up 3, looks like a V, go over 1, up 1, over 1 this way, up 1, and then that's your graph. It's as easy as that. No, this will just be one problem. This will be like number 1 would be this. And then you graph that. All right? But it's doing two things though. Right? It's kind of two things into one, I guess, but it's still one equation. It's not two equations. It's still one equation. All right? What about this? Let's get rid of a lot of this. Let's get rid of everything except for my graph. There we go. Oops. Thought I grouped that. I guess I didn't. Let's group it. Okay. What if I asked you to do this? Watch. Oops, that's a little thick. Let's change that a little bit. What if I asked you to graph y equals, put a negative right there? What do you think that's going to do? It's going to make it go down. Exactly right. Do you remember this from Algebra 2? Yep. Did I teach you Algebra 2? I didn't. What did you have me for? Just geometry? Just a 1 year? Okay. So it's been a couple years since I've taught Algebra 2. Let's see. Let's put some stuff in here. Let's put -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, just to show you why it does what it does. Put in -2 in for this absolute value. So what's the absolute value of -2? It's +2. But what do I have out in front of this thing? I got a negative out in front of it, don't I? All right, so that turns this +2 into what? Into -2. See that? So what it was going to be is just changing the opposite sign. Remember the original one? So instead of going to the left 2 and up 2, we go to the left 2 and down 2. What about this one? Put a -1 in for this. The absolute value of -1 is 1, but you got to take the opposite sign, which makes it -1. Put a 0 in for this. Does that change? Does that negative do anything to the 0? No, because what's the absolute value of 0? 0. What's -0? Still 0, right? Put in a 1. Let's see what happens here. Put in a 1 for this. So the absolute value of +1 is 1, but then we got to take the opposite sign of it because you got a negative out in front, and so that's going to be a -1 as well, isn't it? All right? And this is going to be a -2 as well. So let's take a look at our graph. So our graph is going to be this. -2, -2, dot right there. -1, -1, 0, 0. Does it keep on going up? Nope. Starts turning back around again, doesn't it? At +1, it becomes -1. At +2, it becomes -2. So look what it did to our graph. It took this graph and just basically just flipped it, didn't it? Remember that original red graph that we had in the other problems? Okay, all it did was take it and it just made it point down. Okay, it is a reflection, yeah. Yeah. Does that make sense? So, let's do this. Let's get rid of all this. And I'm going to ask you to graph something. There we go. Let's see, I'll go dark blue. I'm just making this up. What if I asked you to graph this? Negative absolute value of x plus 4 minus 2. Okay, go ahead and graph that right there. Give you a minute. All right, let's give it a shot. Let's do this in red so it stands out a little bit better. First of all, we got to figure out where we're going to start. Where's the vertex to our graph going to be? Where's that point to the V going to be, right? So first of all, you saw that it's absolute value, so you know it's going to look like a V. All right, so let's find out where that point is. So I look right here. So originally, we would have started right here at the origin, right? So what does that plus 4 mean we're going to do? Go to the left 4. Good. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, what is that minus 2 up there going to do for us? It's going to go down 2, isn't it? 1, 2. So we put a dot right there. Now, what's the other thing that changes this graph just a little bit? The negative out in front. So instead of going over 1 and up 1, what are we going to do? We're going to go to the right 1 and down 1. And then we're going to start here and do what? Go to the left 1 and down 1. Everybody see that? That's really all you need to do your graph. But if you want to draw a couple more just to kind of get you on a straight line, that's fine. And then that's what your graph looks like. Is this some of the easiest graphing you've ever done? I think so. And it looked complicated, didn't it? I mean, look at that thing. That looked like a mess, right? But now that you know what all those things do, now it's pretty easy to graph, wouldn't you think? Now, the cool thing about this, we don't have enough time to go through many more examples, but the nice thing about this same thing works for these other graphs that we showed you yesterday. Remember, like the square graph? So remember this, y equals x squared. What did that look like? It looked here, right? And then 1, 1. So if I put a 1 in for this, right, 1 squared is 1. But if I put a 2 in for x, what do I get? Y is 4. So if I go over 2, I go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is not a straight line now, is it? If I put in a 3, I go up to 9. I really don't have much room, so I'm not going to do that. But then, what do I do the other way? If I put in a negative 1, I get a positive 1. If I put in a negative 2, I get a positive 4. So our graph, if I could, it's a good thing I'm not a surgeon because I'm not really that steady with my hands here. That's not too bad. It's better than I've done before. All right, and let's just tell you what. Let's grab that, and let's group that. Oops. Let's group that. There we go. So there's our original. Let's get rid of this absolute value. Okay, watch this. This is our original absolute value graph. So just copy it. What if we did this to it? What if I said, graph this, y equals x minus 2 squared plus 3. I'll just use the easy numbers again so we don't... Are you paying attention? Okay, it seems like every time I'm saying something, I hear you talking. Nobody else is. It's always you. Just letting you know. All right, so look at this. What if I asked you to graph this thing right here? Exactly, it does the same exact thing. You're right. Okay, it does the same exact thing, except it's not a V this time, though, is it? Let's go with this purple. It's not a V. It's like a curve. It's a parabola, right? But what do? What does that tell you to do? It tells you move it to the... I'll tell you what, I'm just going to grab this thing. It means you move it to the right 2, right there, and it moves what? Up 3. There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3, and then there's your graph, and you're done. What if we got fancier and we put a negative right here? What do you think that does to this graph? It flips it, right? And the cool thing about this program, I can do this. Watch, I think I can. Is it reflect? Yeah. Reflect it about the horizontal. Let's preview it. No, that's not what I wanted it to do, but that's okay. Oh, I know what I want to do. I just want to rotate it. Watch, I can do it. Give me a sec. I gotta learn this thing. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do either. Let's go back. Oh, sorry. Let's do this. Grab it. Oh my goodness. I'm on the spot now. We'll just do that. We'll just, what did I do first? I reflected it, right, about the horizontal. There we go. That's fine. But then what's it going to do? It's not going to be up there, is it? It's going to be right there. There we go. So that's what that thing would look like if you had a negative out in front of it like that. So you can do that with all these other graphs. Isn't that nice? Okay. Now there's one other thing we could do, and if I had like 5 more minutes, I'd show you. But I think you can get away with... there's like 1, 2 of them. There's 2 on this worksheet that... Something I just didn't cover real quick. Let's just do this real quick. Watch this. What if I did this? Let's go back to that absolute value one. What if I did this? Okay, you watching? Come on, this is probably the only class you're going to do anything in, right? So you might as well just watch the next couple minutes. Or next minute. It's about all we have. Watch. What if I did this and I put a 2 out in front of it? Does that move it to the left? Does it move it up and down? Does it move it to the right? No. What it does is this. Watch. If I did an XY thing here, watch. -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Look what it does. The absolute value of -2 is 2 times 2 is what? 4. This is going to be a 2. That's going to be a 0. That's going to be a 2. That's going to be a 4. What does it do to this? -2, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. negative 1, 2, right here. 0, 0, 1, 2, and 2, 4. Look what it did to it. It just made it skinny, didn't it? Remember we talked about that yesterday? I said we were going to do something that made it skinnier and made it fatter. Well, this is exactly what does it. Right there. See what it did? It made it skinnier. Because what did the original one look like? Do this in blue. Watch. What did the original one look like? It looked like this and this, didn't it? Right? It looked like that. And it looked like that. Everybody see that? So that blue one was the original, just y equals absolute value of x. The red one, it made it skinnier. So that number that's being multiplied, you'd think it'd make it fatter, right? Because you multiply something, it gets bigger and bigger. But it actually makes it skinnier, okay? And that's exactly what it does. All right, so the 2 out in front makes the thing skinnier. It's going to do the same thing with a parabola and all the other things. All right, so I think I've given you enough right here. And for having a half day before an Easter break, I think that's quite a bit of stuff, don't you? You ever do this much work on the day before a big break like this? No. So there you go. I'll give you a little worksheet. And look, don't wait until the week. Okay, just do it tonight. I mean, you got a half day, all right? Just do it real quick. If you have a study hall or if a class, you're watching a movie or something like that in, try to get it done then, and then you don't have to worry about it the rest of the week.